I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. During a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, Senator Alex Padilla berated his Republican colleagues and accused them of being dismissive of threats facing democracy. Although the hearing was about combating threats against election officials, many Republican senators focused their lines of questioning on other topics, such as threats made toward Supreme Court justices following the ruling to overturn Roe v. Wade. Padilla redirected the conversation back to election security, reaffirming the government's commitment to helping address any concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to begin by just echoing some of the comments made a few minutes ago by Senator Ossoff, and just to disgust, I feel, at some of our colleagues, including members of this committee, in their efforts to minimize, if not outright dismiss, the significance and the magnitude of the threats to our democracy that we're discussing here today. But in the spirit of the second part of Senator Ossoff's message to make sure we're maximizing the time and the talent of the witnesses before us, let me proceed to my questions. There's really two areas that I want to get to in this first panel. The first is for Mr. Polite.
Yes, sir.
Now, in an era where election workers rightfully fear that they're under increased threat from election deniers and others who may wish them harm, it's critical that the federal government demonstrate that it stands ready to respond to the election community's concerns. And doing that, as you've heard from others, requires an adequate allocation of resources to the problem. I know when I was serving as Secretary of State for California, one of the things that became a normal practice was making rounds at all the fusion centers in state. In a state as big as California, there's more than one or two, to make sure that it's not just federal agencies and state agencies that are coordinating, but across state agencies and across federal agencies. My question is specific to U.S. attorneys' offices. Mm-hmm. In each of the U.S. attorneys' offices across the country and in each of the FBI field offices, is there an assistant U.S. attorney and a special agent assigned specifically to the task of either responding to or coordinating a response to concerns raised about election threats?
Yes, Senator. This is not an issue. This is not a problem that we can solve exclusively from Washington, D.C. It requires coordination with state and local officials, and it certainly requires coordination with each of our U.S. attorneys' offices and our FBI field offices. What we have in each U.S. attorney's office is what is called a district election officer. That is a trained, specialized prosecutor on these types of election-related crimes. And then in each of the 56 FBI field offices, there is also an election crimes coordinator, again, a specialized agent focused on these types of offenses.
That's great to hear, and for the public to hear. As a follow-up to that question, whether it's in each of these offices or in each of the task forces, national or local, are the individuals involved specifically assigned to this elections threat-related work, or are they taking this election threat-related work in addition to other duties and responsibilities?
It is oftentimes, I would say, in the overwhelming majority of these cases, these U.S. attorneys' offices have these U.S. attorneys' officials have additional collateral responsibilities within the office. Their focus is on election-related crimes broadly defined, so they are members of this election threats task force. But any election-related offense that may come forward and be referred to the U.S. Attorney's Office for investigation or prosecution, those U.S. attorneys, those AUSAs, are oftentimes involved as well.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wyman, good to see you again.
You as well.
As you know, I previously served as California's Secretary of State and therefore California's Chief Elections Officer. And I, along with you, learned that CISA was a critical partner in helping us achieve a successful election that allowed, I'm going to brag a little bit here, in California, more Californians participating in 2020 than in any election previously. And they did so safely when they went to cast their ballot. That's what I really hope that this sort of collaboration between CISA and state and local elections partners is continuing to do. I'm sure you benefited when you were Washington Secretary of State, but now you're on the other side of the table. And so can you describe, from this point of view, CISA's level of engagement with state and local officials, including on the issue of addressing and responding to election threats, and whether there's any barriers to collaboration that this committee and Congress can help address?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And by the way, Washington also had a very high turnout in 2020, highest record turnout. Not that we're competitive. CISA really is focusing on trying to first and foremost make election officials at the state and local level aware of the work that Department of Justice is doing in this space, and aware of the services that are available not only by our agency but other federal agencies. And we're doing this by going out to election conferences, working with our protective service advisors and cybersecurity advisors located across the country, in fusion centers often, and really just trying to get that word out so that election officials know not only to report immediate threats, because that, as the senator earlier mentioned, that's part of the problem, is reporting all of the threats that are out there, but also knowing that they can work with state and local or state and federal law enforcement partners to secure their election system and people.
If there's anything else this committee or Congress can do to be of assistance, please don't hesitate, including, as Senator Blumenthal mentioned, additional resources.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.